All right, get ready, because today we're taking a deep dive into something truly amazing, the iconostasis in Orthodox Christianity.
I'm excited.
And even if you're not religious, I think you'll find this fascinating.
Oh, yeah, totally. It goes way beyond just pretty pictures. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's really about how art and architecture and spirituality all blend together.
To create like this powerful experience.
Yeah. So our mission today is to really figure out, what is an iconostasis?
But,
Why is it such a big deal in Orthodox worship? And how does it act like almost like a visual portal?
right, like a door.
Yeah, to this whole other world of meaning.
It's incredible how this one structure can tell you so much about a whole religious tradition. Like we're talking centuries of history,
Yeah.
evolving theological ideas and different artistic styles, all packed into this one visual feast.
So picture this. You walk into an Orthodox church.
Okay.
What's the first thing you see?
The iconostasis.
It's not the altar. You're met with this wall of icons, often just incredibly ornate, separating the nave where the congregation sits from the sanctuary where the altar is.
Yeah,
That, my friend, is the iconostasis.
it is.
But it's not just a pretty partition.
No, it's definitely not just decoration. It's more like a living tapestry
Oh, I like that.
that tells the story of the faith,
Right.
and it shapes the entire worship experience.
So let's rewind a bit. The iconostasis didn't just pop up overnight, right?
No, definitely not. It evolved over centuries. Early churches had these really simple barriers, maybe like choir screens.
Right, right.
And over time, they just became more and more elaborate,
Yeah.
reflecting both artistic trends and how people, understood the relationship between like the earthly and the divine.
Right.
And by like the 6th century, we actually see something resembling an iconostasis at the Hagia Sophia in Constantinople.
Whoa, the Hagia Sophia.
Yeah,
That's a pretty iconic building itself. Pun intended, of course.
definitely. And from there, the iconostasis just continued to evolve. Russian Orthodox churches in particular, are known for their massive, awe-inspiring iconostasis.
Huge ones, yeah.
Incredibly complex, almost like entire narratives unfolding across the wall.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not a static thing. It's been constantly evolving. But for me, it's the symbolism that just blows my mind.
Yeah.
Because it's like every element of the iconostasis is so carefully chosen
Absolutely.
and just packed with layers of meaning.
It's true. It functions almost like a visual catechism,
Oh, interesting.
teaching the core beliefs of the faith through images rather than words.
Right.
And the way those images are arranged, the hierarchy of the tiers,
Yeah.
tells you a lot about how Orthodox Christians view their faith and their relationship with God.
Okay, so walk us through it.
Right.
What are some of the key elements,
Right.
and what do they represent?
Well, one of the most prominent tiers is the Disiasis tier, usually right in the center.
Okay.
And it depicts Christ enthroned in glory, flanked by Mary, his mother, and John the Baptist.
Okay, I've seen that, but what's the deeper meaning?
Well, this tier emphasizes, the idea of intercession. Mary and John the Baptist are seen as interceding with Christ on behalf of humanity. It's a reminder that we're not alone in our prayers,
Right.
that we have these like powerful figures advocating for us before God. And it speaks to the Orthodox understanding of the saints as like active participants in our spiritual lives.
So it's not just a static image.
Right.
It's conveying this whole dynamic relationship between humanity and the divine.
Exactly. And then you have the festal icons. They depict, major events in the Christian year. Things like the Nativity, the Resurrection, Pentecost. It's like having the key stories of the faith visually present all the time.
Right.
A constant reminder of like the narrative that underpins the whole tradition.
So it was like a visual calendar.
In a way, yes. And it's not just about remembering these events. It's about making them present, bringing them into the here and now.
Okay, so I'm seeing how it weaves together so many different aspects of the faith.
Yeah.
But what about those like big ornate doors in the center?
Yeah.
They got to be important.
Those are the royal doors, and they are loaded with symbolism. They represent the entrance to the Holy of Holies,
Okay.
the most sacred space within the church where the altar is located. And the fact that only clergy can pass through those doors underscores the sense of mystery
Right.
and the separation between the earthly and divine.
So they're not just functional.
Yeah.
They're adding to this whole atmosphere of like reverence and awe.
Right.
And I've noticed those royal doors often have images of angels on either side.
Yes.
Like they're standing guard. What's up with that?
The Those are usually the archangels,
Yeah.
Michael and Gabriel. And their placement there, flanking the royal doors, tells us something really interesting about how Orthodox Christians view their role. They're not just messengers, they're protectors of the sacred, guardians of this threshold between the worldly and the divine.
It's like they're the bouncers of heaven. You need the right credentials to get past them.
Well, metaphorically speaking, yes. And their presence there adds another layer of meaning to the whole experience of approaching the Holy of Holies. It's a reminder that this isn't just any space.
Right.
It's a space set apart, a space where heaven and earth meet.
So I'm starting to get how the iconostasis isn't just a wall.
Right.
It's like a whole theological statement,
Yeah.
a visual representation of how Orthodox Christians experience their faith. But I'm also wondering about the more personal side of things, you know?
Right.
Like, how does the iconostasis actually impact what people feel,
Right.
what they think when they're in an Orthodox church?
Well, it's important to remember that the iconostasis isn't just a passive backdrop. It actively shapes the way people experience the liturgy.
Okay.
It's integrated into the service itself,
Yeah.
kind of guiding the flow of the ritual
Oh, interesting.
and directing the worshiper's attention.
So it's not like you just sit there and admire it from afar. You're actually interacting with it.
Absolutely. For example, icons are meant to be venerated. People
Yeah.
might kiss them, light candles before them, or bow before them.
Right.
It's a physical, tangible way of connecting with the divine, showing reverence and seeking a blessing.
Okay, I can see how some people might find that practice a bit confusing, maybe even a little controversial.
Yeah.
What's the thinking behind venerating icons?
It's crucial to understand it. This isn't about worshiping the icons themselves.
Right.
Orthodox Christians believe that the veneration is directed towards what the icon represents,
Okay.
whether that's Christ, the Virgin Mary, or a saint. Think of it like cherishing a photo of a loved one.
Right.
You're not worshiping the paper, you're expressing love and connection to the person in the picture.
Yeah, that's a helpful analogy. Yeah.
So it's about honoring and remembering, not about idol worship.
Exactly. And this act of veneration is woven into the fabric of the Orthodox service. The opening and closing of those royal doors, which we talked about earlier,
Right.
marks very specific and important moments in the liturgy. It's like
Right.
a visual cue for the congregation,
Okay.
signaling transitions between different parts of the service.
So the iconostasis is almost like a stage set, like framing the action
Yes.
and creating a sense of drama.
Yes. And it also acts as a focal point for prayer.
Okay.
The arrangement of the icons, the flickering candlelight, the incense,
Very.
it all contributes to a sensory experience that encourages contemplation and deepens the worshiper's connection to the divine.
So it's not just about what you see, it's about the whole atmosphere,
Yeah.
the feeling of being enveloped in this sacred space.
Right.
And you mentioned earlier that the iconostasis is like a visual catechism.
Yes.
How does that play out during a service? Well, the arrangement of the icons, especially those festal icons, is meant to teach people about the life of Christ, the Virgin Mary, and the saints.
Right.
It's a visual narrative that reinforces the core teachings of the faith, making them accessible even to those who may not be literate or understand the language of the service.
That's so clever. It's like a silent sermon unfolding across the wall.
Yeah.
Okay, we've talked a lot about the specifics of the iconostasis,
Right.
but I want to zoom out a bit now. How does this all connect to the broader ideas of Orthodox spirituality? What does it tell us about how Orthodox Christians view their relationship with God?
That's a great question. And to understand that, we need to talk about the concept of the incarnation, which is central to Christian theology.
Okay, just to refresh our memories, the incarnation is the belief that God became human in the person of Jesus Christ. Right.
Precisely. And for Orthodox Christians, the iconostasis reflects that idea in a tangible way.
Okay.
It's a visual representation of the divine, made visible and accessible to humanity. Just as God became flesh in Christ, so too is the divine made present in these icons. It's a way of bridging the gap between the earthly and the divine.
So interacting with the iconostasis through veneration, or even just gazing upon it, is a way of experiencing that connection with the divine.
Exactly. It's a reminder that God is not distant or abstract,
Right.
but present in the world, in the church, and in our own life.
Wait, hold on.
Yeah.
You mentioned that some people see the iconostasis as a barrier between the people and God.
Right.
How do you reconcile that with this idea of bridging the gap?
That's a common misconception.
Okay.
It's true that the iconostasis creates a physical separation between the nave and the sanctuary.
You're right.
But that separation is not meant to exclude, it's meant to heighten the sense of reverence,
Okay.
to create a space of mystery and awe that draws the worshiper in, rather than shutting them out. It's about recognizing that the Holy of Holies is not just any space.
Right.
It's a place set apart, a place where heaven and earth meet.
So it's more like a velvet rope than a brick wall.
Yeah.
It's about creating a sense of anticipation,
Right.
a sense of entering into a sacred encounter.
Exactly. And this idea of the iconostasis as a bridge between the earthly and the divine is also reflected in the way it depicts the communion of saints. When you look at the iconostasis, you're not just seeing individual figures.
Right.
You're seeing the whole church, both living and departed, united in their faith and their devotion.
Mm.
It's a reminder that we're part of something bigger than ourselves, a spiritual family that stretches across time and space.
That's such a beautiful concept.
It is.
It's like the iconostasis is a visual representation of that invisible web of connection that binds all believers together.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm definitely getting a deeper appreciation for the richness and complexity of the iconostasis.
That's it.
But I'm also curious, are there any common misconceptions about the iconostasis that you've come across? Things people might get wrong or misunderstand?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
One of the biggest ones, and we touched on this earlier, is the idea that venerating icons is idolatry.
Right.
Some people outside of the Orthodox tradition might look at people kissing or bowing before icons
Right.
and think they're worshiping the images themselves.
Yeah, like they've got the wrong idea about what those actions actually mean.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's important to remember that for Orthodox Christians, the veneration is directed towards what the icon represents.
Right.
Christ, the Virgin Mary, a saint, etc., not the physical object itself. It's about the spiritual reality that the icon points to.
So it's not about the wood and paint, it's about the divine presence that those materials are trying to convey.
Exactly.
Are there any other misconceptions you've encountered?
Another one I hear sometimes is that the iconostasis creates a barrier between the people and God.
Yeah.
Some people see this physical wall and assume it's meant to keep people separated from the divine.
Right.
But as we've discussed, that's not the case at all.
Yeah, it's more about guiding our attention, focusing our gaze on the sacred mysteries happening within the sanctuary.
Exactly.
It's about setting the stage for a more profound spiritual experience.
Precisely. And I think it's also important to note that there are different interpretations and understandings of the iconostasis within the Orthodox tradition itself.
Right.
It's not a monolithic thing.
Right. Just like any religious tradition, there's room for nuance and diversity of thought.
Yes.
It's not a one-size-fits-all kind of thing.
Exactly. But I think at its core, the iconostasis represents this beautiful intersection of art, faith, and tradition.
Yeah.
It's a powerful testament to the enduring legacy of Orthodox Christianity.
I couldn't agree more. And even for those of us who aren't Orthodox Christians,
Yeah.
there's a lot we can appreciate and learn from the iconostasis.
Absolutely.
It makes you think about the role of symbolism in our own lives, the ways we connect to something larger than ourselves, and the power of art to express profound truths.
I couldn't have said it better myself. It's a truly fascinating subject that has something to offer everyone.
Yeah. Regardless of their religious background, even if you never step foot in an Orthodox church,
Right.
understanding the iconostasis can give you a deeper appreciation for the power of art and the universality of the human search for meaning and connection.
That's so true. It's a reminder that we're all on a journey, searching for something beyond ourselves. And sometimes the most unexpected things can illuminate the path.
Yeah.
Speaking of illumination, there's one thing I'm still curious about.
Okay.
We've talked about the meaning and symbolism,
Right.
but who actually creates these things? Who are the artists behind these incredible works of art?
Now that's a fascinating question. Creating an iconostasis is not your average arts and crafts project.
Right.
It's a highly specialized art form that requires not only technical skill, but also a deep understanding of Orthodox theology and tradition.
So it's not just about being a good painter or sculptor. It's
Yeah.
about being a theologian with a paintbrush.
In a way, yes.
Yeah.
Iconographers, the artists who create icons, undergo rigorous training,
Right.
both in the artistic techniques of icon painting and in the theological principles that guide their work.
Wow.
They're not just copying images, they're conveying spiritual truths through their art. They see themselves as vessels, channeling the divine through their work.
Wow, that's incredible. It's like a whole other level of artistry.
It is.
It's not just about aesthetics. It's about creating a window into the divine.
Right.
I imagine the process of creating an iconostasis must be a deeply spiritual experience in itself.
Absolutely. It's seen as a form of prayer, a form of devotion.
Wow.
Every brushstroke, every detail is infused with intention and meaning.
Right.
And I think that reverence, that spiritual energy, is reflected in the finished product.
Yeah.
When you stand before an iconostasis, you can feel that it's not just a collection of pretty pictures, it's a portal to another realm.
Okay, I'm getting chills just thinking about it.
I know.
And it makes me wonder, do you have to be an Orthodox Christian to appreciate the beauty and power of an iconostasis?
Not at all. You don't have to subscribe to the specific beliefs of orthodoxy to be moved by the artistry. The symbolism, the sheer sense of awe that an iconostasis evokes.
Right.
It transcends religious boundaries in a way.
Right.
It speaks to something universal within us, a longing for beauty, for meaning, for connection to something greater than ourselves.
It's like it bypasses the head and goes straight to the heart.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that even in our increasingly secular world, there's still room for wonder, for mystery, for those moments that take our breath away and remind us of the sacredness of life.
Beautifully put. And I think that's a perfect segue to a question I'd love to get your thoughts on.
Okay.
We've talked about how the iconostasis connects to the idea of the incarnation God becoming human.
Right.
But what about the opposite movement?
Okay.
Humanity's striving towards the divine. How might the iconostasis, with its layers of symbolism and its focus on spiritual ascent, offer insights into our own journeys of growth and transformation?
Whoa, that's a deep one. It's like you're asking us to flip the script.
Yeah.
To see the iconostasis not just as a representation of God coming down to us,
Right.
but as a roadmap for us ascending towards God.
Exactly. Think about the hierarchy of the tiers, the placement of the saints, the emphasis on intercession, and the communion of saints. It's all pointing towards this idea of spiritual ascent, of humanity participating in the divine.
And it's not just a passive process, right? We're actively engaging with it through prayer, through contemplation, through the physical acts of veneration. It's like the iconostasis is a training ground for our souls, a place where we can practice those spiritual muscles that help us reach for something higher.
I love that analogy. It's like a spiritual gym for the soul.
Yeah.
And just like physical exercise, the more we engage with these practices, the stronger our spiritual core becomes.
This is blowing my mind. I'm starting to see the iconostasis not just as a beautiful object, but as a dynamic tool for spiritual transformation.
And that's the beauty of it, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not just a static piece of art. It's a living tradition that continues to inspire and challenge us to deepen our relationship with the divine.
Well, I don't know about you, but I'm feeling incredibly inspired right now.
Me too.
In fact, I think I need to go find myself an Orthodox church to visit.
You should.
And experience an iconostasis firsthand.
Definitely.
All this talk about visual portals and spiritual gyms has me itching to step through that threshold and see what awaits on the other side.
I highly recommend it. There's nothing quite like experiencing it in person.
Yeah.
To stand before an iconostasis and let its beauty wash over you,
Right.
to feel the weight of its history and symbolism is truly a transformative experience.
It's like we've been given this new lens through which to view the world, and I'm already noticing iconography and symbolism in places I never would have before.
Yeah.
It's amazing how expanding your knowledge can open up whole new ways of seeing things.
Absolutely. Knowledge is a powerful tool. And the more we learn, the more connected we become to the world around us and the richness of human experience.
This has been such a fascinating and insightful journey, expert.
Oh, thank you.
I feel like we've barely scratched the surface, but I'm so grateful for your expertise and your passion for this subject.
The pleasure was all mine.
And that's what the deep dive is all about. But before we say goodbye, I want to leave our listeners with something to ponder.
Oh, I like where this is going.
Yeah.
Little food for thought to take with them.
Exactly. Because learning doesn't stop when the podcast ends, right?
Right.
So, dear listeners, we've talked about how the iconostasis reflects this dynamic movement between the divine and the human, between God reaching down to us and humanity striving upwards towards the divine.
Yeah.
But what about the role of art in all of this? How does the visual language of the iconostasis, with its rich symbolism and its focus on spiritual truths, help us bridge that gap between the seen and the unseen, the earthly and the divine? Something to think about as you go about your day.
That's a wonderful question to leave them with.
Yeah.
It encourages them to apply what they've learned to their own lives and their own spiritual journeys whatever those may look like.
And on that note, we'll wrap things up for today.
Sounds good.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of the iconostasis.
Of course.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep those brains buzzing.
Okay, I'm still thinking about that idea of the iconostasis as a spiritual gym.
Yeah.
It's like we've been doing some serious soul lifting this whole episode.
That's a good way to put it.
But I think there's one more layer we haven't talked about yet.
I'm intrigued. What else is on your mind?
Well, we've talked a lot about how the iconostasis helps us connect with the divine, but I'm also really curious about the actual craftsmanship,
Right.
The artistry involved in creating these incredible structures.
Yeah.
What can you tell us about the actual process of building an iconostasis?
That's where things get really interesting.
Okay, good.
Creating an iconostasis, it's a real feat,
Yeah.
It takes both artistic skill and spiritual devotion. It's not something you just throw together overnight.
So it's not like an IKEA project.
Definitely not. It usually starts with a whole team of artisans,
Okay.
often wood carvers and carpenters.
Right.
And they create the framework of the iconostasis.
Mm-hmm.
They use these traditional techniques, often passed down through generations, to build this intricate lattice work that will eventually hold the icons.
Wow, I can almost picture like the old school woodworking shops with the smell of sawdust and the sound of chisels tapping.
Exactly.
That must be amazing to watch those artisans at work.
It's a true art form, seeing that level of skill and precision.
Yeah.
And then once the framework is complete, the iconographers come in.
Okay, wait, hold on. Iconographers. That sounds pretty specialized. What kind of training did they go through?
Oh, it's rigorous. Aspiring iconographers, they often apprentice under master iconographers.
Oh, wow.
Sometimes for years.
Really?
Learning not just, the technical aspects of painting, but also the spiritual and theological significance of each image.
So it's not just about like mastering the brushstrokes.
Yep.
It's about understanding the deeper meaning
Exactly.
behind every symbol,
Yes.
every gesture,
Yeah.
every facial expression.
Iconographers see themselves as conduits,
Wow.
channeling the divine through their work. And there's like a whole set of guidelines and traditions that dictate how icons should be painted, from the composition, the color palette, to the specific gestures and expressions of the figures.
Almost like a sacred geometry, a visual language that's been refined over centuries
That's a great way to put it.
to convey these spiritual truths.
Yeah. And it's amazing to think about how this tradition has been passed down through generations, keeping that visual language alive and evolving. Each iconographer brings their own unique style, their own interpretation, while still adhering to those core principles. It's this beautiful blend of continuity and innovation.
So the creation of an iconostasis is really a deeply spiritual act in itself.
It is.
Like a collaboration between the artisans and the iconographers and the divine.
Absolutely. It's like a symphony of skill, devotion, and inspiration.
But let's shift gears a bit and talk about something you mentioned earlier.
Okay.
The different styles of iconostases. You said that Russian Orthodox churches are known for their really grand iconostases.
Yes, very elaborate.
What are some of the other stylistic variations that we might see?
Well, the style can vary depending on the region, the historical period, and even the specific preferences of the community. For example, Byzantine iconostases tend to be a bit more compact and hierarchical, with a really strong emphasis on symmetry and order.
So it's like each style has its own personality, reflecting the culture and artistic influences of that region.
Exactly. And that's what makes studying iconostasis so fascinating. It's not just about this one static form.
Right.
It's about this incredible tapestry of styles and interpretations and artistic expressions.
I feel like we need a whole other deep dive just to explore all the different stylistic variations.
Maybe we do.
But for now, I want to go back to something you said earlier.
Okay.
This idea of the iconostasis as a window, a portal to another realm.
Right.
You said it's not just about looking at something.
Yeah.
It's about looking through something. Can you talk a little more about that?
Absolutely. In Orthodox theology, icons aren't just representations of sacred figures. They're actually considered to be windows to heaven.
Whoa.
A means of connecting with the divine presence.
So it's not like we're just looking at a picture, we're engaging with a spiritual reality.
Exactly. And the iconostasis, with its arrangement of icons, acts as a kind of visual gateway.
Right.
That guides our gaze, focuses our attention, and draws us into that deeper experience of the divine.
It's like the iconostasis is helping us to see with our souls, not just our eyes.
I like that.
And that brings us back to this idea of spiritual ascent. The iconostasis is not just a static object.
Right.
It's a tool that helps us on our journey towards spiritual growth.
Beautifully put. And I think it's important to remember that this journey is not a solitary one. The iconostasis, with its depiction of the communion of saints, reminds us that we're part of a larger spiritual family, a community of believers,
Yeah.
all supporting and inspiring each other on the path towards the divine.
It's like we're all climbing this spiritual mountain together, and the iconostasis is like our base camp,
I love that analogy.
where we can gather strength, find guidance, and connect with those who've gone before us.
Exactly. And just like a mountain climber relies on their gear and their companions to reach the summit, so too do we rely on spiritual tools and the support of our fellow believers to navigate the challenges of our spiritual journeys.
This has been incredible, expert.
Thank you.
I feel like we've really peeled back the layers of the iconostasis,
Yeah.
and I'm walking away with like a brand new appreciation for how art can connect us to something larger than ourselves.
That's wonderful to hear. The pleasure was all mine.
Yeah.
I always enjoy sharing my passion for this subject
Yeah.
and hopefully sparking some curiosity in others.
Well, that's what the deep dive is all about. But before we wrap up, I do want to leave our listeners with a final thought. We've talked about the iconostasis as this window to heaven, this portal to the divine. But what if we each carry within us our own, inner iconostasis?
Oh, I like that.
A sacred space where our own spiritual journeys unfold. What would the icons on your inner iconostasis represent? What values, beliefs, or experiences guide you on your path towards meaning and purpose? Something to think about as you go about your day.
That's a beautiful and thought-provoking question to end on. It invites everyone to reflect on their own inner landscapes and how they might create their own sacred spaces, both within and around them.
And on that note, we'll bring this episode of The Deep Dive to a close. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.